India's BrahMos missile is changing the entire game in the South China Sea. When Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto visited New Delhi in January 2025 as a chief guest for India's Republic Day, one of his key agendas was to discuss the acquisition of India's BrahMos supersonic missiles worth about $450 million. This deal is now very close to being finalized. Indonesia is the third Southeast Asian nation after the Philippines and Vietnam to be highly keen on buying this Indian-made missile. But why the rush to get BrahMos? What makes BrahMos so special, and why does China feel threatened? This is Shubhangi Sharma. Let's dive in. This story begins in the South China Sea. Countries in the region, fed up with China's aggressive naval maneuvers, are looking for ways to deter Beijing's interference. The BrahMos missile, with its supersonic speed and precision strike capability, is fast becoming their weapon of choice. While Indonesia is in advanced stages of negotiation, Malaysia and Thailand are also eyeing potential purchases. Naturally, this isn't sitting well with China. China is aggressively pushing its territorial ambitions in the South China Sea using a mix of military buildup and coercion. It is engaged in active territorial disputes with Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam in the South China Sea. Meanwhile, India is keen on arming these nations and isn't worried about upsetting China. After all, Beijing has supplied Pakistan with nuclear and ballistic missiles and provided submarines to Myanmar, Bangladesh, and others, directly impacting India's security. At the time, China defended these deals as transactions between sovereign nations. By that logic, Beijing shouldn't object to India selling defense equipment, including the BrahMos missile, to Southeast Asian nations. The BrahMos sale is about maintaining a balance of power in the region, especially as China continues to militarize the South China Sea. While this isn't a new offer and isn't directly linked to current tensions, China will undoubtedly object, arguing that it destabilizes the region and benefits external forces opposed to Beijing, like the United States. India's view is that this isn't aimed at any third country. It's simply about supporting Indonesia's legitimate defense needs. The China factor is a key driver of India-Indonesia security ties, with both nations increasingly wary of China's growing assertiveness. Indonesia in particular has had multiple run-ins with China over the Natuna Islands, which fall within its exclusive economic zone but are also claimed by Beijing. Chinese fishing vessels and Coast Guard ships have repeatedly entered the area, leading to tense confrontations. Now, BrahMos is India's big success story in the world of defense exports. Developed as a joint Indo-Russian venture, it is based on Russia's P-800 Onyx Yakhont missile, but has been significantly upgraded by India. BrahMos is a supersonic missile capable of hitting targets at a speed of Mach 3, that is 3 times the speed of sound. It has a range reaching up to 800 kilometers, though export versions are capped at 290 kilometers due to restrictions under the Missile Technology Control Regime, or the MTCR, of which India is a member. It can carry warheads up to 300 kilograms. It has a formidable stealth feature and boasts pinpoint accuracy with an advanced guiding system. But getting international buyers wasn't easy. Initially, BrahMos faced stiff competition from Russia's own Yakhont missiles, which Moscow had already sold to Vietnam and Indonesia in the 2010s. There were also legal hurdles over intellectual property rights, and India was cautious about upsetting China by exporting weapons to Beijing's neighbors. That restraint is long gone. With worsening India-Russia ties and Beijing's growing assertiveness, New Delhi has lifted its self-imposed restrictions on defense exports. The result? BrahMos is now a key pillar of India's defense diplomacy. And Indonesia is not the first one to be interested. The Philippines was the first to take the leap, signing a $375 million deal in 2022 for 3 BrahMos missile batteries. The first delivery happened in April 2024, and Manila is now negotiating for more. Meanwhile, Vietnam, which has had its eye on BrahMos since the 2010s, is close to finalizing a $700 million deal for 5 missile batteries. Indonesia is just following suit. negotiating a $450 million contract that could soon be wrapped up. Both Vietnam and Indonesia already operate Russian missiles for coastal defense and anti-ship warfare. But instead of simply upgrading with newer Russian models, they are opting for India's BrahMos. This is a strategic move to reduce dependency on Moscow and diversify their military ties amid shifting global power dynamics. Indonesia is even exploring a currency arrangement for the deal, which could set a precedent for future defense transactions with India. Beijing is therefore rattled by the increasing presence of BrahMos missiles in its backyard. The missile's speed, stealth, and precision make it a major threat, particularly to Chinese naval operations. Military experts in China have called BrahMos a troublemaker for international security, and back in 2021, its deployment near India's line of actual control caused a diplomatic uproar. China's worries revolve around three key points. Firstly, Russia's role. Beijing isn't happy that Moscow has greenlit BrahMos exports to China's regional rivals, seeing it as a betrayal of their so-called strategic partnership. Secondly, China fears that a regional arms race could be triggered. Chinese scholars argue that BrahMos sales could further militarize the South China Sea, leading to more standoffs and confrontations. And thirdly, the Vietnam factor. If Hanoi deploys BrahMos for coastal defense and anti-ship operations, China's maneuverability in the western South China Sea could be severely restricted. The Philippines in particular is a case study of why China is alarmed. Military analysts believe that if Manila launched 24 to 36 BrahMos missiles, it could seriously cripple a Chinese aircraft carrier group, giving the Philippines a powerful deterrent. With BrahMos missiles stationed in areas like Zambales, Luzon, and possibly Palawan, the Philippines is creating a strategic shield over hotly contested areas like Scarborough Shoal and the Second Thomas Shoal. To counter this, Chinese experts argue that the Philippines and Vietnam lack the sophisticated radar systems needed to properly target BrahMos missiles. But that argument doesn't hold much weight. After all, the Houthis in Yemen have been successfully launching missiles at Saudi and US assets. Plus, Manila is already investing in radar systems from Japan and Israel to plug this gap. One of China's biggest concerns is that BrahMos poses a direct threat to its Coast Guard vessels and landing ships, many of which lack strong air defense systems. In theory, China could try to take out these missile batteries preemptively, but any such move, especially in the Philippines, could trigger the US-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty, dragging Washington into the conflict. Instead, China has now shifted to gray zone warfare, harassment tactics aimed at discouraging the Philippines from becoming a major missile power. Now, India's BrahMos deal serves multiple strategic goals. It strengthens its position in the India-China rivalry, it positions it as a major defense exporter, and it expands maritime partnerships in the Indo-Pacific in favor of India. The BrahMos missile isn't just a weapon, therefore. It's a strategic tool that is reshaping military alliances in Southeast Asia. With BrahMos, India is setting the stage for long-term defense cooperation, which will further cement these nations' ties with New Delhi. These relationships, combined with India's Act East policy, will enhance its geopolitical standing in the region for years to come.